Hey everybody, it's Will Saletan from the Bulwark. Well, summer is winding down and the political conventions are over. But before we move on, I want to show you something really strange about the two conventions. Something that says a lot about the difference between the Democratic Party and the Republican Party. If you've been alive in this country any time before Donald Trump was president, you may have heard the names of the Republican presidential nominees who preceded him: Mitt Romney, John McCain, George W. Bush, Bob Dole, and George H.W. Bush. But if you watched this year's Republican convention, you didn't see any of those men praised by a Republican speaker on the convention stage. Trump has been talking about some of these men at his rallies, but only to insult them. In fact, if you wanted to find praise for these former Republican presidents and Republican presidential nominees at a convention this year, you had to watch the Democratic convention. That is totally bizarre. How can that be? The answer is today's Republican Party is a cult. It has abandoned its principles and its history to worship one man. The last presidential nominee of the Republican Party, before it became a cult, was Mitt Romney. He led the Republican ticket in 2012 with his running mate, Paul Ryan. At this year's Republican convention, there were zero mentions of Romney. But Trump has been talking about Romney on the campaign trail. Here's what he said about Romney at a rally in Atlanta on August 3rd.
That we had Romney. Remember Romney? And they did polls. Romney and Paul Ryan, what a combination that was. Whoops, there we go off Fox. Fox just won. No, Paul Ryan's on the board of Fox. What a mistake that was. But they had Romney and Paul Ryan. What a team that was. They got clobbered.
And then, in an interview 2 days later, Trump went after Romney again.
Of course, the only one was Mitt Romney, real stiff, and he couldn't get elected dog catcher right now.
Well, that's not too friendly. How about the Republican presidential nominee before Romney? That was John McCain in 2008. What did Republicans say about McCain at their convention this year? Absolutely nothing. But again, Trump is talking about McCain on the campaign trail, just like he's talking about Romney. You might remember this moment from Trump's first campaign in 2015.
He's not a war hero.
He's a war hero.
He's a war hero.
5.5 years.
He's a war hero because he was captured. I like people that weren't captured, okay? I hate to tell you.
And then here's Trump, earlier this year, taking another shot at McCain, who, you might remember, suffered injuries in Vietnam that permanently prevented him from being able to raise his arms over his head.
And we're going to fight for much better health care than Obamacare. Obamacare is a catastrophe. Nobody talks about it. Without John McCain, we would have had it done. But John McCain, for some reason, couldn't get his arm up that day. Remember? He goes that like that. That was the end of that.
Classy. How about the guy who was the Republican nominee before McCain? That was President George W. Bush. Trump did mention Bush in his speech at this year's convention, but not to praise him. The only thing Trump had to say about Bush was that he, Trump, was a better president than Bush was.
Under President Bush, Russia invaded Georgia. Under President Obama, Russia took Crimea. Under the current administration, Russia is after all of Ukraine. Under President Trump, Russia took nothing.
By the way, don't think for a minute that Trump cares about Ukraine. For him, this whole thing is about ego. Listen to the way Trump talked about Bush and the other presidents in his debate against Joe Biden a couple of months ago.
Russia, they took a lot of land from Bush. They took a lot of land from Obama and Biden. They took no land, nothing from Trump, nothing. He knew not to do it.
Did you hear how he put that? Russia took no land from Trump. For Trump, this isn't about protecting Ukraine. It's about Putin beating Bush, and it's about Trump outperforming Bush. It's certainly not about defeating Putin. Listen to what Trump said about Bush in an interview with Elon Musk 2 weeks ago.
I mean, we forced Obama, if you think about it, Obama and Biden, and Bush to a certain extent, in all fairness, forced Russia and China together.
That's classic Trump. He's not blaming Putin for Russia's aggression. He's blaming 3 American presidents, including Bush, for antagonizing Putin. Trump feels more sympathy for Putin than he does for Bush. Apart from Trump's dig at Bush in his acceptance speech, there was no mention of Bush at this year's Republican convention. On the stage, not a single Republican politician praised Bush or the Republican presidential nominee before him, Bob Dole, or the nominee before that, President George H.W. Bush. There were a few favorable references to the president before that, Ronald Reagan. But there were also several digs at Reagan for not having accomplished what Trump did. Check out this line from Tom Homan, who ran Immigration and Customs Enforcement under Trump.
I've worked for 6 presidents, starting with Ronald Reagan. Every president I've worked for said they're going to secure the border. President Trump actually did it.
And listen to this video played at the convention in which a veteran compared Trump to Reagan and other presidents.
Well, I served under every president from Ronald Reagan when I first enlisted all the way through Joe Biden. And by far, Donald Trump was the most respected and best commander-in-chief that we had. Donald Trump is a strong leader. He cared about the troops. He showed in his actions that he put us first.
In his acceptance speech, Trump did concede that Reagan was a good president. But he also bragged that he, Trump, would finally build the missile defense system Reagan couldn't get. This is what Trump always says about Reagan. He was okay, but he wasn't as good or successful as Trump. For example, here's what Trump said when he was president about drilling for oil in the Arctic National Wildlife Refuge.
I also got you Anwar in Alaska, which may be bigger than everything. And they couldn't get it. Ronald Reagan couldn't get it. No president could get it. And I got it approved.
And here's what Trump said in June in his debate with Biden about overturning Roe v. Wade and bringing abortion policy back to the states.
Everybody wanted it brought back. Ronald Reagan wanted it brought back. He wasn't able to get it. Everybody wanted it brought back, and many presidents had tried to get it back. I was the one to do it.
This is why you saw so little praise for Reagan on the stage of the Republican convention, and why you saw no praise for any subsequent Republican presidents or Republican presidential nominees. It's why you didn't even see Trump's own vice president, Mike Pence, at this convention. Pence is a Reagan Republican who on January 6th defended the Constitution against Trump. Pence didn't speak at this convention. He didn't even attend. He knew he didn't belong there. The Republican Party has become a cult. It worships one man, Donald Trump. It treats him like a god. And he's a very jealous god. Trump ridicules McCain and Romney. He blames George W. Bush for failing to protect America on 9/11. Trump views every Republican president who came before him as his inferior. He's only interested in bragging that he's better than they were. And the entire Republican Party has followed Trump. Today, if you're looking for praise for these Republican leaders of the past, you have to turn to the Democratic convention. That's where Republicans who still respect these former Republican presidents and Republican presidential nominees were allowed to come out of the closet. Check out these remarks at the Democratic convention from John Giles, a Republican mayor in Arizona.
My hero, John McCain, taught us to put country over party. And that's how Vice President Harris and Governor Walz will lead too. I have an urgent message for the majority of Americans who, like me, are in the political middle. John McCain's Republican Party is gone, and we don't owe a damn thing to what's been left behind.
And here's former Congressman Adam Kinzinger, another Republican speaker at the Democratic convention.
I was just a kid when I was drawn to the party of Ronald Reagan. to his vision of a strong America, the shining city on a hill. I was a Republican for 12 years in Congress, and I still hold on to the label.
And it wasn't just Republicans who spoke up for McCain and Reagan at the Democratic convention. It was Democrats, too. Listen to Ruben Gallego, an Iraq war veteran who's now the Democratic nominee for Senate in Arizona.
But politicians like Donald Trump, they don't stand with us. They call patriots like Senator McCain losers. John McCain was an American hero. Show some respect.
And here's Leon Panetta, the former Democratic congressman and defense secretary.
Listen to President Reagan. President Reagan. Isolationism never was and never will be an acceptable response to tyrannical governments. Never. Trump tells tyrants like Putin they can do whatever the hell they want. Kamala Harris tells tyrants, the hell you can, not on my watch.
Or how about these words from Carlos Eduardo Espina, a young man who emigrated to the United States from Latin America.
Ronald Reagan, a Republican, once said, "We lead the world because unique among nations, we draw our people, our strength from every country and every corner of the world." Reagan knew that welcoming immigrants is not a Democratic or a Republican value, it is an American value.
The reason you saw all this praise for Reagan and McCain at the Democratic convention instead of the Republican convention about welcoming immigrants, rejecting isolationism, putting country before party, and respecting war heroes, regardless of their politics, is that today's Republicans have turned against those values. They can't talk about Romney standing up for the Constitution, or McCain standing up for democracy abroad, or Reagan and George W. Bush welcoming immigrants. They can't talk about any of that because they no longer believe it. If you still believe in those values, the only place you can go today is the Democratic Party. That is a party that is willing to embrace the highest ideals of American conservatism, even if the Republican Party won't. See you next time.